Part 2 of 2 parts. What was Mike Hoare really like? Here, the man himself, then in his late 90s, reads a riveting passage about himself from a book. 3 minutes.
But how he conducted his campaign on that and the following days, how he so suddenly turned up in the rebels' rear time and again, and how he created peace in the country, confirmed what I was thinking in this quiet night before the glowing fire. While outside the tropical rain was pouring down and the soldiers were sleeping. 100 years ago, this little slim man would have become a great conqueror of the English colonial empire, a Lord Clive, a Warren Hastings, one of the Britons who conquered continents with a handful of men. It was his bad luck to have been born too late, that no England was standing behind him anymore. His campaign was a wild adventure in the service of a foreign government. History will hardly remember Hoare's march through the rain, which that night broke the main line of the rebels, as it remembers Clive's march to Arcot through the rain. And yet, Hoare had approximately the same number of soldiers with him, and just as many enemies in front of him as had Clive. The lieutenant colonel from Dublin was unable to conquer a new realm because Britain herself had given up her empire. He saved the Congo from communism, but for how long? He saved European hostages from a tortured death. Perhaps he did not acquire worldly glory, but he gained the esteem and adoration of all people who lived with him during those weeks, whether they were Americans, Europeans, or Africans. Next day, I reported to Hoare with an ambulance vehicle, a Volkswagen bus. Thus, for the first time, I followed troops of the already legendary 5th Commando. Anyone accustomed to Belgian military units, as I was, would have felt transferred into another world. There were no wild whiskers and beards, no crazy fancy uniforms, camouflage drill caps and daggers sticking out of every pocket. The men were all in identical khaki uniforms and wore green caps, the insignia of the 5th Commando, modelled on that of one of the foremost British commando units. Before we departed, Hoare called an officers' conference. Everything was done politely, in a disciplined and British style. No plans were discussed, nor were there long debates as with the Belgians.